Hello and welcome to your award-winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, Last Word on Spurs. We're back third night in a row with another phenomenal journalist to bring you up to date, everything you need to know about the January transfer window. Ricky's not here yet. Don't click off the stream. He'll be joining us very, very shortly to go through a lot of business that has already been done for Spurs, which is very different to the looking ahead to what could be done that we're used to in previous transfer windows. But there's still plenty to get through with a lot of names, as always, being thrown around with Spurs and the targets they might be looking to bring in this January, and even maybe looking ahead to a couple of deals they might look to target in the summer. I'm delighted to say, as is the case every transfer window, we're lucky to be joined by the fantastic Lyall Thomas from Sky Sports. Lyall, it's been a different window, I'd say, for Tottenham with the business done early. But looking at the transfer window in general, how have you been keeping and how have you been keeping busy this window?
Yeah, good, thanks. I think I'm on a little bit later than normal. I was not very well, unfortunately, when around December time, when I was hoping to come on and give everybody a bit of a brief about what the window would be like. So yeah, a bit later than planned. So sorry about that, but here now anyway. And you're right, it's been a really interesting window in lots of different ways. I mean, it's been quite a sluggish window, not a lot of business done. There's a lot of reasons for that. We can go into not just for Spurs, but obviously I think Spurs is actually the anomaly because they've had the money to be able to do some spending and have acted quite quickly and decisively, which has not always been the case, right? When we've been talking about Tottenham transfers in the past, we've usually been talking about frustrated fans not getting what they want early in the window and having to wait until the last minute. Whereas this time Spurs have acted really quickly and decisively and got what they wanted. They got ahead of the competition and got ahead of some quite strong competition as well. So, really, really interesting window from that point of view. But yeah, it's been I've enjoyed it. It's been an interesting window to get into journalistically. Lots of noise, lots of stuff to find out, plenty to say, plenty to report, but not many actual deals having been done yet. But listen, we've still got, what have we got? 13 days to go. So plenty more that can happen in that time.
From a Tottenham perspective, have you been surprised at how quickly some of the business has been done? Because I think we've had a few false dawns over the last 5-6 years with Tottenham seeming to be changing their approach to the transfer market. That summer under Antonio Conte, we got 4 deals done quite early on there, but still felt like we had to wait until the season had kicked in to get some business done. You could argue maybe a similar thing with Brennan Johnson over the summer, but it was 11 days into the window when Tottenham had confirmed the signings of Timo Werner and Radu Dragusin. The feeling you were getting behind the scenes, were you expecting that, or did it still come as a bit of a shock?
Well, yes. I mean, Tottenham are in a quite strong position in quite a few markets at the moment. As I touched on just then, it's been a strange market in terms of finances because a lot of clubs are sailing pretty close to the wind in terms of their PSR, their profit and sustainability rules, right, and their budgets. And that's obviously been reflected in quite how few deals have been done at this stage. And also, the clubs have been spooked by, the charges that have been handed out to Everton and Nottingham Forest now. And I think clubs have realised that they can't even go over even just a little bit, even just for a short space of time, because the rules are going to come down hard on them. The Premier League and the Independent Commission are serious about this. So, but Tottenham have been in a place where they've had some money to spend. They've known what they want to spend it on, and done all the work necessary to get themselves in a really strong position to be able to get a player that they want. And that obviously was Radu Dragusin, with the priority being the centre half. I mean, listen, they've had all the time since the end of the summer when they still wanted to do a centre half to do that kind of work. So that was all going on behind the scenes, throughout September, October, November, to get themselves in the position to do what they wanted to do. So, listen, it's Tottenham are in a strong position in many markets, I think, also because of the personnel they've got. They brought in Johan Lange, whose contacts are really strong. His vision for spotting young talent, I think, is one of the things that they wanted to bring in, especially. But also, I think I alluded to this in the summer as well, that there's more alignment at Tottenham in terms of bringing in players and identifying players, and there probably has been for quite a long time, simply because there's good alignment with the manager's representation. Obviously, got a strong, long history with Spurs, CA base. There's still Paratici, who they're able to draw on as in a consultancy capacity in the background. So they're actually quite formidable in the market, I think, Tottenham in what they've got, in the resources that they've got to draw from. And given the strong start that Ange Postecoglou has obviously had in the season as well, they're quite a big draw now. The style of football, the positivity around the club, the position that they're in. So there's lots of reasons to join Spurs, and I can see Ricky's got a nice wry little smile on now. He's joined us because I'm speaking positively about his club.
I feel generally bad, guys. This is where the quality goes back down now because I enter the place and Matt's raised it so high at the very, very start. Firstly, Lyall, mate, lovely to have you here. Matt, what a phenomenal entrance, mate. What a phenomenal intro. This is why Matt is the man. Absolutely love having Matt back on. And also, mate, Lyall, wishing you, obviously, hopefully you're fully recovered now. Like you said, we beat the brief. We're going to have the brief, of course, for what was going to come. I'm sure you're going to enlighten us when we were meant to have you on in the year.
I know. Well, we've all been dropping like flies. I mean, there's been quite a few people who've been getting sicknesses recently in the office and stuff like that. So it was my turn then and everybody else's turn now, I think.
Oh, mate, I tell you, at the moment, it is quite mad. I mean, like I say, it's been a bit of quite a window, like you opened up and said, Lyall. I think it's obviously quite a bit strange. I mean, I know they were reportedly saying this is going to be one of the quieter windows. And I think you touched it with Matt there. It has been interesting, the fact that, you've been on Lyall the last 6, 7, 8 years. I don't want to age you too much. I don't want to age you with that absolute fine barnet you've got there. But the fact of the matter is that I think we're honest and say that, every window we have you on. And obviously, Matt's
I look a bit older every time, yeah.
This club ages us all. This club ages us all. It ages us all, I tell you. It ages us all. And I think the thing is that, the last few winners you've been on, and we end up throwing about 40 names at you. And don't worry, those 40 names are still coming, Lyall, in all different capacity. Don't get too scared. But the reality is that at the moment, I think that we are in, like you said, a fairly decent place, and one in which that we actually are really refreshing to really see what the next part of the Ange Postecoglou era holds, because there is genuine excitement about what Spurs can achieve. Before I drive you mad on the FA Cup and what you feel might happen with Man City, because that's the ultimate $1 million question, more the interrogation of players.
Okay.
How do you feel, Lyall, Spurs' start to the season has been under Ange? Because I think when we had you on his initial appointment, you were fairly positive, and I think there was a definitive split really amongst what this guy not only could achieve, but what he could build at Spurs. Have you been surprised by just his start to his reign at the football club?
Yes and no. I mean, talking to people in football circles for as long as I have, Ange Postecoglou's name has been around, and people have been raving about him for a long time. I mean, I work closely with another news editor who's a big Celtic supporter, and he's been waxing lyrical about Ange for a long time. And he said to me when Tottenham hired Ange that he said, "Listen, you're getting a top manager. He's one of the top managers, and Tottenham are going to be great under him." And I thought, okay, well, yeah, maybe you'll be right, maybe you won't. I think the thing that did it for me, really, I was at the first game of the season, the Brentford game, and I don't know if I mentioned this at the time. I don't know if we did a podcast after that game or not. I think maybe we did. And I may have said at the time that having seen them in that game and how they reacted to losing Harry Kane just a few days before, you could see the work that he'd done with the team already. And you could see that the mindset and the attitude was exactly in the right place. I know they drew the game, but, there was something there, something happening there. Especially in stark contrast to Manchester United, who I watched against Wolves a few days later on Monday Night Football, where there wasn't anything happening. And that was, a team that Ten Hag had for a lot longer. And after I saw that, I thought, this Spurs team, they're going to go places. So it's been an outstanding start. It really has, especially when you consider, the challenges that they've had, the players that they've lost, the injuries that they've had, and how they've clung in there. Obviously there was that sticky patch where they lost a few games in a row, but as soon as those players came back, right, as soon as Romero really was back in the team, essentially, results picked up again. And, listen, we can wax on about all the stats and everything, as well, that point to how well they're doing. I think if you look at all stats considered, I think they're the third best performing team in the league. I think they're third on shots. I think total shots on goal. I think they're fourth on fourth on most shots, third best passing in the league, things like that. So, they look really good and they're picking up results at the same time. So, what's not to like at the moment?
You mentioned the injuries there, Lyall. I think it's such an important point to make. And I know a lot of clubs have been affected by injuries. You know, Manchester United are now at a stage where they're getting some of theirs back. For clubs like Newcastle and Chelsea, it looks like it's even still getting worse at this stage. But it's still such a crucial point for Tottenham, especially when you look at the fact that it's some of our new signings who've been out for prolonged periods of time. You know, Mickey van de Ven finally back on a Premier League football pitch against Manchester United. Romero and Bentancur are both coming back a little bit early, and hopefully the likes of Kulusevski and Maddison coming back in the next couple of weeks as well. You add to that the suspensions that we've had, although self-inflicted, still a headache and something that Postecoglou has had to navigate with the likes of Romero, Basuma and Destiny Udogie.
Yeah.
And then yet again, we had the international call-up this month with Basuma, Sarr and Son all representing their nations at the AFCON and Asian Cup respectively. How impressed have you been with the way that the Postecoglou has dealt with that? Not only with the changes he's had to make on the pitch with playing, you know, Emerson and Davis in positions that maybe he would rather not, but also how he's been in his demeanour and kind of not being willing to use that as an excuse and saying, no, it's the way that it is what we have to deal with.
Yeah, well, I think you've hit the nail on the head really there, which is that Ange, the refreshing thing about Ange is that he doesn't make excuses. You know, he says it how it is, and he's very honest and upfront in his assessment. But he's also honest and upfront in his assessment in quite a respectful way. So I think that's quite refreshing. But yeah, like you said, he doesn't make excuses. It's just get on with it. You know, these things happen in football, and I think that's probably rubbing off on the players. You know, he's not letting the players make excuses. He's not letting the players, you know, rest on the issues that they've had. It's just, let's pull our socks up and get on with it, make the best of it we can. You know, I mean, to a certain extent, I think, you know, in the first season, the first 6 months, the expectations have been less because he's been a bit of an unknown quantity. So I think he's had some money in the bank, shall we say, to get a few, you know, to get a few bad results. But, you know, the performances are still there. And I think that's what Ange has been concentrating on, is the style of play, the attitude of the players, the application of the players, you know, putting together the team and the style and the system that he wants, regardless of the result. And fortunately for him, the results have been coming at the same time. And that's probably just a reflection of how good the system actually is, how good tactically they are, how well trained they are, how well drilled they are, and also the quality of the players that they've got. So, you know, I think that's the reason why they've been able to cope so well. And listen, you know, who knows where Spurs would be if they'd kept all those players in the team, or most of those players in the team, right? Because you look at where they are and how many, they're only 5-6 points short at the top. So, you know, 2 more wins and Tottenham could be sitting pretty at the top of the table at the moment. You know, Maddison's been a big miss. Van de Ven and Romero, obviously a big miss. Those 3 players are quite crucial to that first team. But yeah, I think the only thing I'll caveat that with, the only sort of question mark I have, and I've been thinking about this recently, is kind of around the injuries and you know, whether Spurs can go the distance, whether the current squad that he's got can go the distance to the end of the season playing at the intensity that they do. It, you know, remains to be seen whether they can do that. You know, whether, you know, more injuries will crop up during the season. You know, maybe as a result of the intensity, and you know, hinder them a little bit by players missing. It remains to be seen. That's the only thing that I can think of might, you know, cause a bit of a hiccup, because fortunately for them, they're not playing in multiple competitions. Okay, yeah, they're playing in the FA Cup as well now, but they haven't been. So, you know, they've been able to get by on the relatively small squad that they've got. But listen, I mean, you know, Tottenham really are, I think, odds on for a place in the top 4. They get to the end of the season, they finish in the Champions League places. You have to say that is a really successful season for Ange in his first season.
Can I just ask you, Lyall, from a journalistic perspective, how you kind of look at Ange's evaluation of the injuries that we've had? You know, like I mentioned there a minute ago, Rodrigo Bentancur has come back over a month early. Christian Romero the same, and it's gotten to the point within the fan base, you know, that someone with 18 followers said Maddison was starting against Man United, and we kind of thought it might be possible because so many of these players have been coming back early. I know Ange has not been happy with, you know, questions about his evaluation over injuries, and he didn't want his integrity to be questioned, which is not at all what's happening. But do you think there's an overestimation of the injuries that are there? Do you think there's a bit of gamesmanship from Spurs that they're trying to, not giving the perfect time frame for players to return?
No, that's not the sense that I get. No, I think that these players have just been really, really adamant and determined to get back as quickly as they could. I mean, you actually saw that a little bit even before Ange came in. I think Harry Kane came back early a number of times, didn't he, when he was injured? Just probably through sheer determination and willpower. It might help with the recovery. The mindset that players have when they're recovering from injuries is important. It might sound a little bit maybe superstitious, but it is. I think there's an element of that, of players being in such a determined frame of mind that they can actually help their recovery along. So no, I don't think there's anything sort of disingenuous going on. And I think the thing about Ange is you can take him at his word when he's speaking, especially in press conferences.
Lyall, I'm going to ask you a question I haven't asked you since I met your amazing self. I think it was virtually, by the way, before I actually got the chance to give you a hug in person. That sounds really bad. But
you threw your arms around me as Sky Central.
I know, mate, I know. That was a transfer in itself, wasn't it?
What a moment.
The ticker was going
long lost brothers, wasn't it, after years apart?
Breaking news. That was the transfer window. I haven't asked this question about 7 years, Lyall. It tells you just how far off Spurs have been in terms of the league. Do you genuinely feel Spurs are in a title race, Lyall? Is it more top four battle in your mind?
Yeah, why not? I mean, we're where are we? We're in January and they're 4, 5, 6 points behind. So why not? I mean, absolutely. I mean, you look at any title race at this stage of the season in years gone by, and the teams who are within that 6 point difference, I think at this stage, you can't discount any of them. I mean, I would say this because he's Sky, but I was listening to Gary Neville saying the same thing the other day. I think he was saying that you can't discount what Tottenham can potentially achieve when they get the players back. I mean, you look at that first 11 that they could put out with Maddison and Kulusevski coming back into that team, and Basuma coming back into midfield. I mean, that if you look at that midfield three, Basuma, Bentancur, Maddison, Kulusevski. Son when he comes back, Richarlison who's scoring, and that back four. I mean, you probably only say maybe Man City's team is better than that on paper.
Yeah,
and football's not all about what's written on paper, as we all know. So, look, I wouldn't discount Tottenham at this stage. I think it would be foolish to do that. They need to keep all their players fit and together, though, I think, to achieve that. I think if they keep having these hiccups with players being suspended and or injured, then that's gonna potentially hinder them in terms of picking up points. But I mean, the other thing is they've already shown that they can pick up points and win games against the top teams. Yeah, and that's also important. Psychologically. Important.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree on that. And Jason puts a question in here that intrigued to get your thoughts on it, Lyall. He would love to ask Lyall the view on squad depth in general. The amount of injuries clubs are getting, does it affect new players coming in the budget? I mean, you know this more than me, Lyall. That the thing about Spurs, obviously, is this season they've played, obviously, this exciting brand of football. And I mean, Ange says they train the way they play, which obviously has seen a number of hamstring injuries that have happened to the squad since the start of the season. They've not let up. Do you have a genuine concern or worry for those Spurs players that will continue until they actually are fully embedded in the way Ange Postecoglou wants them to play? Because that doesn't appear to be slowing down, does it? I mean, we get 2 back, we lose another 3. I mean, it's just the most bizarrest situation where he gets given something in one hand, then the other hand takes something away from him. I mean,
I haven't looked very closely at all the injuries that they've had and how many of those injuries are impact injuries and how many of those injuries are sort of wear and tear. I think there's also a certain amount of the players that they've got are quite young and very enthusiastic and overzealous, and they're all they're really, really enjoying and loving the situation that they're in with Ange at the moment. So perhaps they all need to just take a breath and take a breather and be a little bit more calm and measured when on the pitch for their own body's sake. But yeah, listen, I'm not a physiotherapist or a doctor or a real expert when it comes to how much of the injuries that Tottenham have been about impact and how much have been about wear and tear. But listen, as any modern club does, they will be assessing what is the case and what they can do about it. And they won't just be sort of, well, let's just plow on ahead. They'll be looking at why. No doubt they'll be looking at why some of these injuries have happened and trying to mitigate them happening again.
Amen. Now, before Matt starts the actual genuine interrogation, because it's got to come low on last one of Spurs. It's the.
I was going to say we've been talking about 10 minutes and not a single transfer question yet, so I'm getting away.
Don't worry, mate. They're coming in their absolute hurdles after this. Be prepared, be ready. Get the shield up, get the armory ready. Before we do bring that in, obviously the last time we spoke, since we last spoke, there has been a couple of key integral internal appointments. Obviously, Scott Munn starting his role as CEO and Johan Langer as the technical director. You've already alluded to these guys as well. Fabio Paratici remains working with the club in a form of a consultancy basis. And as Spurs fans like to say, that man is still cooking somewhere around the building or in the building. Really keen to know from you, Lyall, and you've touched upon this, I believe, online as well, just the way that dynamic is working now behind the scenes. It does feel Spurs seem to be structurally a lot more coherent, coordinated, and just seem to have a bit more of a plan. Am I fair in saying that? Does it feel like that for you? Because you've obviously been very close to the club for the last, I don't know how many years. How do you feel about it in comparison to what you've seen there previously back behind the closed doors?
Yes, you're right. But also I think they're benefiting from a bit of a nice variety of voices. I think, the buck stops with Ange really, and Ange is making the decisions. And he said that, in a press conference recently that, he will take the responsibility for the players that they sign, that they're his decision. But I think what they've got is quite a variety of voices, especially when it comes to talent identification, player identification, as in most clubs. But they've got, I think, a few more voices and a few different voices than they've had before, suggesting things to Ange and to everybody that's involved and saying, well, what about this player? You're looking for this. This is what you want in your team. Like take Timo Werner, for example, as a good example, I think, of, okay, this is what we need in our team. We need to replace what we're missing when Son is away. So we need a similar profile. And we need somebody who's got some experience, played in the Premier League, come in and hit the ground running and make an impact straight away. What about Timo Werner? And that might not be something that, other people would have suggested in the past. So, and I think that was, as I understand it, one that was suggested by Johan Langer, I think, and he's got good connections at Leipzig, I understand. So, that's a reflection, I think, of not just the cohesion that's there, but the array of voices suggesting things, and things that maybe wouldn't have been suggested or thought of before.
I have to say, it feels from obviously an outside the club perspective looking in, that we know in the past Daniel Levy hasn't been always forthcoming with funds in the transfer window, and I think Harry Redknapp will put Ryan Nelson and Lewis Saha in front of you to tell you that. But I feel when the recruitment has been as successful as it has been with this new team coming in, that it would always be easier for Daniel Levy to put that money in, if it is an extra 5, 10, 15 million, whatever it is, because he knows what this team has done so far has been successful way more often than not. And the fees we're paying for these players aren't as high as some of the other top teams in the Premier League are. So I think that the success that we're seeing early on in this is just going to bring more and more success.
I think Tottenham, what you're in a situation now is there aren't sort of demands for players who are really right at the top of the market. That they're all agreeing on players who are within the price point that they want to pay, which helps a lot. So.
Yeah, and look, that recruitment team, they're the one that identified the centre-back as the key target that we wanted to bring in this January. Of course, that deal done, which we'll touch on a little bit more detail later with Radu Dragusin coming in. Lyall, are there any other positions that the Tottenham are prioritising as a next signing?
Well, there's a central midfield area to look at. I mean, I wrote some stuff about this yesterday about Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. Obviously, there's a bit of a question mark over him. There's a bit of a legacy from the summer, really, and the fact that he hasn't played much up until this point. But as I reported yesterday, this is going to go down to the last few days of the window, I think, whether there might be some movement here or not. Obviously, we've got a 2-week break now, but it's still a bit of an unknown quantity regarding the returns of Bissouma and Sarr from AFCON. Obviously, they could be back by the end of the month, or they could still be playing in the tournament through until February. Obviously, we haven't got firm dates yet on the return of James Maddison. Gio Lo Celso has obviously had a bit of a knock as well. So we saw a 3-man midfield of Skip, Højbjerg and Bentancur for the first time again the game against United, and I thought they did really well, by the way, considering that two of them have not been playing that regularly.
Absolutely.
But the point is, they need Højbjerg at the moment, and they might still need him come the end of the month. So, for as long as he's a Tottenham player, it will be Tottenham's decision, really. You've also got the element of the deal as well, and where Højbjerg wants to go. So, Tottenham want a fee for him and an acceptable fee for him. So someone's got to stump up that money as well at the same time and offer that. And as I said at the top of the show, we're in a market where there's not a lot of money around. So, there are clubs that are interested in Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. We know we've already reported those clubs like Juventus and Napoli. And, he's on the list at loads of other clubs as well that I could name, that if they got into a position where they could do something in that position, that they would look at him. But I don't think that those clubs will end up getting into that position. Like, we reported earlier in the window that, for example, that he was on Manchester United's list in the summer and he stayed there. And, he would have been one that they looked at if they didn't get Sofian Amrabat, for example. So, he's a name that stayed on that list. But, at this point, it doesn't look like Manchester United are going to make any changes in midfield. It doesn't look like Casemiro's leaving, for example. Which would need to happen, I think, for them to be able to bring a player in that position. So that's just an example of a situation that, in other circumstances may have materialized that in this window isn't looking like it's going to materialize. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I mean by there's a lot still to sort of play out and work itself out before Pierre-Emile Højbjerg goes and Spurs can think about, can we do something in midfield ourselves and bring in somebody ourselves that we like. They're also faced with the decision of, if we can get one that we really like someone like Conor Gallagher, if it's something they have to wait for to the window, I think they will be faced with a question of, should we wait for that or should we do something else? That's another part of the equation that still needs to play out between now and the end of the window. So that's the area of the field that was. There were 3 positions essentially coming into the window that Tottenham were looking at. Centre-back, they've sorted that. Left winger, they've sorted that. And then central midfield was the last position that I understood that they were going to get to. And they're now there, and they've got themselves there with, plenty of time to spare. So Tottenham are, I think, in a good position in the market and have had a good window so far. So they're quite relaxed about where they are. Listen, there's loads of names that I could mention, players they like, players that they've watched and been monitoring. I said a little bit about a few of them. Ederson at Atalanta is quite an interesting one, more a defensive midfield player, but really good, by the way, really good player, bags of potential. There's who else do they like? I think they like Hayden Hackney a little bit at Middlesbrough, but I don't think he's quite there yet. I don't think he's quite at the level. If he came in, I don't think he would play that much, so it might be better for him to stay where he is for his development. Players like that, there's plenty that they would look at. Gallagher is one that they really like, though. He's one that they had the sort of principles of a deal worked out in the summer, but obviously he ended up staying.
Can I ask you, Lyall, just on Pierre, just so we're clear before we go for our first break? People, I know they will ask you about a million names now. You started that, Lyall. You started mentioning names there, so don't blame me.
Sorry, yeah. I'm normally waiting for you guys, aren't I? I'm trying to get them out of the way so you don't ask about them.
It's already me, bud. Now you're throwing it back at us. This is what the show's done to people. It's ridiculous. On Pierre, your understanding, Lyall, is it a case where Spurs would have to have a alternative player lined up for Pierre to go, or is it a case where if an exceptional offer comes in for Pierre, Spurs would accept that? What do you feel at the moment?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know the actual answer to that, but I think it ties into what I said before of it depends who's available and who's fit. I mean, if they've got all their midfielders fit and a good offer comes in for Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, I think they have to take it seriously. But yeah, we're not quite there yet. Obviously, 2 players out injured, 2 players out at AFCON. I mean, you just have to look at it on paper to kind of come up with a probable answer. 3 positions in midfield: Maddison, Lo Celso, you would say, and maybe Kulusevski as well for that sort of more attacking 10 kind of role. And then the two deeper midfielders, you've obviously got Sarr and Bentancur available for that more of that 8th position. And then 6, you've got Skip, Bissouma. Obviously Bentancur can play 6 as well. Skip can also play the 8 role as well. So, you'd say they've got 6, 7 players, to compete for those positions in the 3 midfield players, even without Højbjerg as one of them. So, good question. It will be interesting to see what happens if that is what happens by the end of the window. Everybody's fit, everybody's back, and bang, a really attractive offer comes in for him.
Does your gut tell you, Lyall, that Pierre could be the player, one of them that ends up being one of the dramatic final days of the window as a potential move? The only reason I say that is, and we said this on the last few shows, Matty, that Pierre, look, I can't question his professionalism. I can't question his attitude, his effort, but there's no doubt about it that that guy wants to play football, has been used to playing first team football, whether it be under Conte, whether it be under Mourinho, under Nuno, was of course part of Spurs' leadership group, obviously, before Ange disbanded that. I think he's really finding that hard to mentally, I'm only guessing it looks like that, mentally deal with the fact that he's not involved in and around genuine first team opportunities. I know he has got obviously minutes here and there and he has started games. There's no doubt, look, Anne just called it a nightclub, right? And I keep making this point that, Pierre is the first really off the dance floor because at the end of a game, he can't wait to get down the tunnel. And that's no disrespect to him. I just feel he doesn't feel really part of it because of the lack of minutes. So I just wonder whether he'll personally look to push for that move.
Well, yeah, no doubt he wants to play. I mean, what's interesting is, football is all about trends, really. And what's trendy now is paying big money for potential, whereas it wasn't before. The young player with bags of potential who's, still a bit raw and has shown in glimpses, great quality and whatever position that is, those are the players that the clubs are going for mostly. Those are the players that are costing the most amount of money. And actually where Højbjerg is now with I don't know what age he is now, 27, 28, 29. Those used to be the players in their prime. Those used to be the players who would cost the most amount of money because they were in their prime, physically, had experience. If they were quality, those are the players that the big clubs were snapping up. Your Manchester United, your Chelsea's, Arsenal, they'd be going for a player like Pierre, and I think to his credit, if you want a defensive midfield player, a solid defensive midfield player, who's good on the ball, can command games in midfield, a real leader as well off the pitch and a top pro, you've got Pierre-Emile Højbjerg standing in front of you, really, if you're another team. Listen, I can't imagine that Tottenham and Daniel Levy be that keen to sell him to another Premier League club, probably for that reason, and probably rather sell him abroad. So, Pierre is sort of, I think, suffering a little bit by those conditions in the market as well, and the fact that the trend has gone with younger talent rather than players like him who are really in the prime of their career. I think that's where Pierre is.
Interesting. Now, what we are going to do, we are going to go for our first break of the show for our listeners on audio. Look, still lots to get through with wonderful Lyall Thomas. I'm joined by, of course, my co-host Matty Hayes, the brilliant Matty Hayes here on Last Word on Spurs. Look, there are players on the move. Despite it being quiet in terms of the ins, the outs are starting to really pick up. There's some acceleration going on. Reguilon, of course, will get last thoughts on obviously his move to Brentford. Japhet Tanganga, it appears, looks set for a loan to Millwall. And we'll ask Lyall about Ryan Sessegnon, who, look, hasn't had much.
When you say that, I just had a message about that.
There's no way I'm more ahead of the game than Lyall Thomas.
No,
absolutely
no.
No,
I've had messages coming up on my phone, and you beat me to it. I think we're reporting that now. I think.
Yeah. I'm just texting you from under the table, Lyall. The last 7 years, you never knew it. I'm the sauce. I'm the sauce. More like ketchup rather than sauce, I tell you. Listen, thank you so much as always for all your incredible support. Get me out of this hole, Matty Hayes. I'm going to hand back to you.
Yeah, look, let's talk about the other confirmed signing for Tottenham this window. And Timo Werner became our first signing of the window just before we got that Radu Dragusin deal over the line. The German international has joined Ange Postecoglou's side in a 6-month loan deal with an option to buy in the summer, believed to be in and around £15.5 million, which is an absolute steal, if you ask me, for a player who has 150 plus goals in his career. Werner made his first start for Spurs in that game against Manchester United, bagged an assist for that crucial equaliser for Rodrigo Bentancur at the start of the second half. Lyall, it's a move that came out of nowhere, and from who we've spoken to, it took not only fans by surprise, but everyone behind the scenes by surprise as well. Can you just tell us a little bit about how that move came to fruition? And I'm also interested to get your thoughts on how you think Werner will actually fare in a Spurs shirt this season.
Yeah, I mean, from the point of view of the deal, you're right, it'd come out of left field a little bit. I mean, I was aware that Spurs have been looking at, quite a few younger players who they wanted to bring in as sort of part of the long-term project in that position, but that they also had a few loan options. I was aware of Jota being a loan option for them, and I think if they hadn't have got Timo Werner, that might have been one they'd looked at a little bit more seriously. But the Jota thing, the Timo Werner thing, caught my attention really when his name was re-emerged and linked with Manchester United, because when I saw that and read that and heard that, I thought, well, then if he must make sense for Spurs as well. And look, they acted quite quickly and got him. And yeah, you're right, he did come out of left field and was a surprising one for most. I think what was surprising is actually Leipzig's willingness to let him go as well. I thought they might be a little bit more keen to keep hold of him. But listen, yeah, Spurs acted quickly and decisively. I think I touched on Johan Langer's involvement in that one. So in terms of on the pitch, I mean, Werner's shown a lot, even at Chelsea, that he's a talented player, great speed, can open up defenses. It's got those attributes that Son's got, really, of picking up the ball on the left-hand side, hasn't he, and beating players, cutting inside. I think his end product is what needs to improve. That's the area of his game. That's the area of the game that Son has that Werner doesn't have yet. And so that's the area of his game that he really needs to realise, I think, his full potential in. So hopefully Spurs can help him do that. Help him work on his shooting. Help him work on his final ball. He got an assist against Manchester United, which is always going to help. I think his shooting left a lot to be desired in that game, but from a first game back in the Premier League away to Old Trafford, not easy. But he met it with gloves on, because he's wearing gloves. But he went for it, didn't he? He wasn't phased at all. So
no.
Let's see what they can do with him. Yeah, really interesting one. Really interesting to see how he gets on. More interesting to see how he gets on when Son comes back as well.
Yeah, agree.
Does he compete with Son? Do they go with Son through the middle and him off the left? Does he come inside? If Maddison's still out, does he play as a 10? Does he play as a 9 as well, Werner? I mean, they've got a good option really there in him. I'll be interested to see how he matches up to the competition there, and if he can get himself in the team when everybody's back and fit.
Amen. Talk about competition, Lyall. Richarlison. Now, last couple of windows we've had you on, I think we've been unsure really on where Richarlison's future actually sits. But at the moment, you're back with us in a really good spot for Richarlison. Of course, that he's got 6 in his last 6 Premier League games. Of course, getting another goal for Tottenham at Old Trafford. He's got some big goals for Spurs. You can see, obviously, scored at Anfield and obviously now scored at Old Trafford. He has scored in crucial games for Tottenham. He's now netted 8 goals and provided 3 assists in all competitions, and he's enjoying his life at Spurs as a genuine number 9. Do you think, given the pickup in his form, and I appreciate it's 6 goals, obviously, in the last 6, and, we've got to see it more consistently. We're not at Harry Kane levels just yet. There's not any players that have ever been really at Harry Kane's level. Do you think there's a genuine chance he does stay at Spurs this summer? And I ask you that because obviously Werner's come in and obviously there's an option to buy on that. And we have, and I think you've reported it as well, there has been genuine interest from Richarlison's end, I believe, in Saudi. So I'm intrigued to know whether you feel, based on how he finishes the season, where his future may lie. Spurs, of course, spent a huge amount of money on him. Where do you think his future does lie long term?
Well, I mean, you've pointed to it by talking about how much money he cost. They made a huge investment in him. And I mean, listen, his future's at Spurs if he does well, and he is doing well at the moment. I think he's needed to. I mean, confidence is a big issue, I think, for Richarlison. I get the sense that he's very much a confidence player, and when he's full of confidence. He's a real handful and a good striker, and he's always really confident when he plays for Brazil. It feels very comfortable in that team, very comfortable in that environment with them. And I just think it's taken a little bit longer for him to feel confident and comfortable at Spurs. He alluded to it, didn't he, in the first phase of the season, that there'd been stuff going off the pitch that had affected him, and that he wasn't feeling as confident and feeling as good as he has been before. I think he's put that behind him now, and that's really showing. And he's also in his best position. Obviously, I think for the first few games of the season, first phase of the season, they were obviously using him through the middle and also off the left as well. They were trying Son through the middle and him off the left, and then vice versa. I think for me, Richarlison is a centre forward. He's a striker. He needs to be in the box, in and around the box, especially if he's going to score goals. I don't think he's going to score goals off the left. I mean, I think he could be a nuisance off the left, but more of a physical nuisance off the left more than one with the ball. So I think the place for him is in the middle, in the box, getting on the end of things, making himself a problem. And that's what he's been doing. Like you said, 6 goals in 6 games. That's really good for him. So if he carries on, future at Spurs, no doubt.
I think a big thing for Richarlison as well was getting rid of that injury that has been at him for so long.
Yes.
He's been a completely different player since having that surgery. And while it felt a weird decision for him to have that surgery, especially after the Chelsea game when we lost Maddison, it's worked wonders for him. And obviously a bit biased, but long may it last. Now, look, depending on how Richarlison and Werner finish the season, Lyall, we could maybe be having the conversation again in the summer about what forwards Spurs might be looking to bring in. And I'm going to throw a few names at you. If any of them stick, please feel free to talk. If you forget them, it happens. We got Morgan Gibbs-White at Nottingham Forest. With their issues at the moment, they may be forced to sell in a homegrown player, even more beneficial to their accounts. We've Sergio Guirassy, 17 goals and 14 in the Bundesliga. Santiago Jimenez scoring for fun out in the Eredivisie with Feyenoord as well. Hwang Hee-chan, Samuel Illing Jr., Nico Williams, Johan Bakayoko of PSV. Is there anything to any of those names?
To a few of them. I mean, listen, you've named some players there that quite a few clubs are tracking. I mean, listen, if Tottenham end up going in the market for another centre forward in the summer, then logically Sergio Guirassy and Santiago Jimenez will be on the list of the players that they consider and look at, no doubt, because they are 2 of the emerging strikers in Europe who are playing very well and scoring goals. If you talk to, as I do, coaches, scouts, sporting directors, technical directors at all clubs, even managers, the managers that I talk to as well, they're mentioning Guirassy, they're mentioning Santiago Jimenez especially as well. So yeah, I mean, listen, it's only normal and logical that those players will be looked at, especially if they carry on the form that they do. Yeah, I mean, forward players that I'm aware of that they've liked and looked at. Bakayoko, yeah, I was talking about him in the summer, if you remember.
Yep.
At PSV as a right winger. Antonio Nusa, I've mentioned recently, is one I know they liked and they had a little look at in the summer. And I think they've had a little sort of, look around at whether he could be done this window as well, but he can't be. Jonathan Rowe at Norwich is a winger that Spurs have been looking at and a lot of clubs have been looking at because he's been doing so well. England under 21 now. Made his England under 21 debut in October. Just broken through at Norwich, scoring goals there. Young player, still quite rough around the edges, but definitely talented. So yeah, listen, there's loads of others around, but I think those are the kinds of players that they'll be looking at come the summer if they want to sign another forward, another winger, especially because I think we touched on it before with Werner. Obviously, if he doesn't do well, Spurs will be looking for more of a long-term solution in that position. More of one that you could say is about the project that Ange is on for the long term, rather than Werner, which is a bit more of a sort of a short-term trial gamble, slight risk. Let's see how this gets on. Yeah, I think they'll be looking at that. Jonathan Rowe is an interesting player for sure. Who else did you mention? Morgan Gibbs-White. I've not heard that. I've not heard that one. He's more of a 10, isn't he? He's more of a sort of Maddison position. I think Maddison's got that position sewn up. Good player though.
I've got to ask you just on that list that Matty mentioned, Hwang Hee-chan.
Hwang Hee-chan.
I mean, that guy has been an absolute flames this season, hasn't he, for Wolves? I mean, I think he's taken a lot of, clubs by surprise because he hasn't really been a prominent goal scorer. I mean, whilst he's been recognised as being a fairly decent player, I mean, he's having an outstanding season under Gary O'Neill. I mean, I think the feeling that we've had from a lot of, again, wonderful journalists like yourself is that he probably will take the time out this summer to really look at his options, because I can't imagine if there is interest from Tottenham, it won't just be Spurs that are interested. I mean, he will get, I'm sure, a lot of eyes by some of the big European clubs as well. Is that your feeling on it potentially?
I think if he carries on the way he's going, yeah, I think he's stepped up a level. I think at Wolves this season. So yeah, he's an interesting one. But again, I think Spurs, if they do something permanent, I think it's more likely to be a younger player.
Interesting. Okay, you don't think so?
Generally, yeah, because I think Spurs have sort of been operating on two fronts, and primarily they've been operating on young players,
right,
to come in. Young talented players like Dragusin, for example, who are going to be part of the project long term.
Right.
Rather than players that are already established or further on in their careers who might be more of a short term thing. So, I wouldn't go as far as to say that Werner's a deviation from that plan, because I think those sorts of loan options are also part of the plan, especially when they need them. But yeah, in terms of signing players permanently, I think they will all. Well, I think they're more likely to go for the younger one, who can develop in Ange's way, than the more established player.
Can I throw one more name before Matty comes in there very quickly? I mean, listen, Matt knows me telepathically. It might already be on his tip of his tongue. Someone mentioned it, Dominic Solanke. He's been really impressive for Bournemouth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Spurs are looking at him. I mean, he's a player that you do feel has kind of got a bit of everything. He's very tall, very composed, got a good finish on him. And, again, not to trigger Spurs fans, I mean, many will feel that we haven't gone out and genuinely replaced Harry Kane. And there might be that argument that Spurs are not looking to replace Harry Kane in general. They're looking to actually have an array of front forward options that basically can all contribute 15 to 20 goals a season, or can also provide, obviously, that goal and assist ratio Spurs are looking for. Do you think, based on what you're telling us, by the fact they're looking for a young striker, that they aren't going for the proven, ready and tested striker to come in for Harry Kane? Or am I deviating away from that plan that you're talking about there by saying that?
I think that the established strikers have been suggested and thought about. I mean, Ivan Toney was thought about in the summer.
Right. Okay,
but I think whether Spurs qualify for the Champions League or not is going to be a big part of it, because if they do, then you have to think, well, they're going to probably need another centre forward. But again, who that's going to be? If Richarlison is scoring goals and he remains the centre forward that they go with, the first choice centre forward, then they're going to be looking for more of a younger player, aren't they, to come in and develop and establish, who's not going to be annoyed every week at being on the bench. Whereas if Richarlison doesn't do so well, they might be looking for somebody who's a bit more established who can come in. Or I don't know. It's very speculative and hypothetical at this stage when it comes to things like that. So I wouldn't rule out completely, established strikers like Dominic Solanke at this point. When we're months away, there's so much to happen. I mean, Solanke's interesting because he obviously made that move to Liverpool. He was a Chelsea youth player, wasn't he? Big things expected of him. Went to Liverpool. Did he go to Liverpool too early in his career? Maybe. Didn't play often. Went to Bournemouth, and then I think a lot of people are probably thinking, well, that's what Solanke's level is. But he's always had bigger potential than that, and he's always been in the minds of other managers and sporting directors at bigger clubs. And I think now this season, because he's scoring so many goals and Andoni's getting a real tune out of him, I think bigger clubs are starting to look at it and go, okay, actually, yeah, Solanke is becoming the player that we all thought that he could become. So that's why his name is now in the mix for your clubs who are looking for your strikers, your Chelseas, your Arsenals, your Man Uniteds, or Spurs. That's why his name's being thrown out there, because he's getting to, or has got now to that level.
Is there any feeling, Lyall, that Tottenham have moved for Timo Werner because maybe they feel their main target isn't attainable until the summer? I think if the loan with an option to buy, like you mentioned, if that was something they were willing to do, if they had to do, since it's one that we've got done early, is there potential that they're aware that maybe their main target is one that just won't be possible until the summer?
Possibly, but I think it's got more to do with the funds that have been available to Spurs this month. I think it's more to do with the money that they've had. They've wanted to commit to the centre half because that's been the priority. And so the fact that there's been options available on the market to loan, I think is suited them in that way as well. So that's probably got something to do with it as well. But yes, I touched on people like Antonio Nusa, for example. He's not available this month. So if they wanted to do a deal for Antonio Nusa this month, it wouldn't be possible because they won't sell him. So yeah.
It is interesting. I mean, again, that puzzle that you work on every single window that we just want a glimpse of to see what that looks like. It just is complicated, isn't it? Snakes and a game of snakes and ladders that, really the pieces keep on changing and Spurs.
Yes, but the way to feel comfortable with it is to have an array of sources, across the game in England, on the continent, and to get a full picture of the market and the market conditions, as well as what players actually people want, and fortunately we have that. We have good, strong sources between all of us and all our group of reporters that work on it, and we work as a team to establish what the market looks like and what people want and whether they can do it or not. So yeah, we're fortunate in that way, but we've also worked hard to get that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, one player that Spurs worked very hard to get in, and I think obviously at one point there was a concern there may have been a U-turn, but we were delighted and pleasantly surprised that Radu Dragusin decided to come to Tottenham over Bayern Munich. It's not often Spurs win battles like that. I'll be honest, and you know that, Lyall, as well, by obviously your time covering Spurs.
Quite incredible.
Yeah, I mean, your thoughts on that transfer now? I mean, we're about a week and a half on now. I mean, I'll be honest with you, that Wednesday where obviously we woke up to the news he picked Spurs was just like, if Carlsberg did Wednesdays, it was unbelievable because you had Dragusin coming, and with no disrespect to say this, I think many felt whilst Eric Dyer's been a phenomenal servant to the football club, probably the right time for Eric to move on. I mean, it feels like Angie's wasting absolutely no time in really identifying the players that he wants, moving on the players that he feels doesn't quite fit, and we're now getting ourselves into what looks like a very, very, I would say exciting squad that's only going to be obviously again added to in the summer. How excited are you by this guy, Lyall, coming to Spurs and his absolute character in the fact that he said no to Bayern Munich, more money on the table, wants to be at Spurs?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure there's all sorts of reasons for that. I mean, I wouldn't even rule out the fact that there's a bit of a Romanian history with players like Gica Popescu and Ili Dimitrescu and dare I say Vlad Chiriches, but probably not.
That's the name we've been waiting for, Lyall, Vlad Chiriches.
There is a link there, I think there was also a grab doing the rounds of the agent talking years ago on Romanian telly with Dragusin when Dragusin was a youth player, saying one day he'll play for Spurs or something. One day he'll play for Tottenham, I hope, one day. So, I guess this was in the making all those years ago, maybe, certainly from their point of view. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, it doesn't happen very often, if at all, that a player would turn down, Bayern Munich. There's different reasons for that as well. I think he's going to get more games at Spurs, probably more chances to play. I think, he obviously comes in as, third choice at Spurs now, but obviously at a time when, the other centre half in Van der Ven is still quite new as well at the same time. So probably hope to compete there for at least one of those places. And whereas I think at Bayern Munich he would go in there probably as fourth choice, and I think it's a good move for him in that way. If he does well at Spurs, clubs like Bayern Munich are still going to be there, aren't they, at the end of the day? So it's the right move for him. Obviously, I think I understand that he'd given his word to it as well. He was certainly very excited about it. And I think they listened very carefully to what Bayern said and Bayern offered. And you have to, right? You have to. So there was a little bit of squeaky bum time, I think, going on a little bit of nervousness that he might have opted to go elsewhere, but Spurs got it done, and I think he's a different kind of player, different kind of centre half in some of his characteristics. I think he's a bit more. I think he's definitely aggressive and on on the front foot and quick and physical, and will make a lot of interceptions, will get stuck in the way that Ange likes his centre halves to do. But he's also got that height factor as well, and interesting to see how he does. Good player, highly rated.
Well, I think Ricky is trying to put me in your bad books here by giving me all the questions where I rattle off the 40 names for you. But look, in the nature that is Tottenham, we're still looking at centre backs that might be brought in again in the future. Who knows what will happen in the summer? Who knows when we might need to recruit again? And again, I'm going to throw some names at you, see what you can catch. Tassin Adebayo, a name that I think has been there for quite a while for Spurs, coming towards the end of his contract at Fulham. Mark Gahey and Lloyd Kelly as well, some targets from previous windows. We've Jared Branthwaite, Joe Gomez, and Ilya Zabarny, who we were actually looking at before he made that move to Bournemouth. Outside of the Premier League, Aruna Sangante, Sebastian Cáceres, Morato, Koki Machida, and Gonçalo Inacio. Is there anything we need to be aware of for those players?
Well, Mark Guehi and Jared Branthwaite definitely on Spurs' list, but they were not available this month. Listen, Spurs had 4 options they were looking seriously at in this window for centre half. 2 of them they couldn't get. 2 of them they could. One was Dragusin, and then there was a plan B. So the likes of Guehi and Branthwaite are more likely to come into play in the summer. 2 players they like a lot. Those 2 I know about. Tosin, I don't think so, is one that Spurs would go for now. Who else is there? You mentioned there was quite a few.
Ilya Zabarny, I think, is an interesting one. And Koki Makita.
I'm not aware of him with Spurs. You mentioned Ignacio. Yeah, he's quite good. Listen, there's loads. I mean, I've got a list on my laptop somewhere of players that I'm aware Spurs like. So
we're not going to make Lyall bring out Wisecout now. We're not going to do it to the man.
Get the list.
It's just loads of receipts. Like a Wisecout list. Could you imagine? What he's had to scout at Spurs and what this team has gone through from the changes. That's one thing as well, Lyall, isn't it? I mean, that's what I've got to say is that because of the changes in managers, I mean, the scouting at Tottenham must be absolutely unreal in terms of, from terms of positionals, from defenders, midfielders, and attackers, and from what Conte would have played with, from what Mourinho would have played with, from what
but that's the job of the scout, right? That's the job. Yeah. That's the art of scouting. The art of scouting is not just scouting players and saying, "Oh, he's good," because to an extent we can all do that.
Absolutely.
The art of scouting is right. The manager is saying he wants this, exactly this, these characteristics, these profiles, and managers have different ideas and different kind of players they want. And Antonio Conte centre half is not necessarily the same as an Ange Postecoglou centre half. So, that's the art of scouting. The scout has to be able to adapt and change and go right. And that's what the best ones do. Those are the ones that make sporting director and technical director. Those are the ones that can say, right, you want this, I found you someone.
I think that's the beauty of having a sporting director and actually a proper setup in there as well, because I think Man United are an example, the best example of a club who don't have that proper structure and are suffering with the constant turnover of managers. And there's players who now have been brought in for Erik ten Hag, who, if he is on the chopping block anytime soon, might not suit the next manager, where you're looking at a team like Aston Villa, where of course we got Johan Lange and some of the signings they made for Steven Gerrard, Boubacar Kamara, for example, such an important part of what's going on now. And I think the likes of Destiny Udogie and Pedro Porro, Rodrigo Bentancur thriving in this Ange system just show that by having that constant voice up there that has a certain style.
That's
and
right.
ideally.
And just sorry to interrupt you, but that a lot of people were saying in the summer, well, Pedro Porro is not going to be a right back. He can't adapt to that system. He's a right wing back, right winger. He's not going to be able to play as a right back.
Exactly. There's some who are doubling down on that, and Pedro Porro's not having it on Twitter. I don't know if you saw his reply to a Tim Sherwood comment, but I absolutely love that.
Absolutely, and neither should he, because I mean he's proved everybody wrong. So good luck to him.
And never trust a man that wears a gilet. No pressure. Now Lyall's going to tell me he wears a gilet, isn't he? Now, and completely ruined this.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
This is what we are going to do.
I wear some dodgy clothes sometimes, but you wouldn't catch me in a gilet.
Thank you for doubling down that, Lyall, and confirming that. We need to know 100%. What we are going to do, we are going to go for our final break of the show for our listeners and audio. Look, when we come back, we'll be discussing where Spurs are in their quest for Conor Gallagher. Just giving Lyall a tee up there to let him know that's going to be coming next on his list. More names to throw at Lyall, and we'll be discussing some of the outgoing Spurs are in the process of doing this window. Listen, there may be a lot more to do. We shall see. I've got to say thanks again for all your support. We've got around 1,000 of you watching us live combined on where we are YouTube-wise, Instagram, Twitter, you name it, Facebook, we're there. So again, thank you so much for all your incredible support. I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Matty Hayes. I can just now say, Matt's upgraded the intros of this show, so I've got absolutely no chance now. We're joined by a wonderful Sky Sports journalist, one of our own news editor, Lyall Thomas, the man back again, back. We always have Lyall on. I've got to say that the amount of feedback I get whenever Lyall comes on here, people just say to me, what an amazing guy. His knowledge is incredible. And look, that's why we keep bringing him back for more. And that's why I keep saying yes. I'm such a stalker that I can't leave him alone.
They're very kind. They didn't used to be that kind to me, so I appreciate it now. So
it's got a lot easier now, mate. We've got a couple through the bag. That's why I can be easier. That's why I can be more friendly. Look, I'll hand over to Matt because there is still this looming of the Conor Gallagher situation that won't go away. Matt, we'll hand over to you and talk us through where we're at, if you can, Lyall, for us. Over you, mate.
Yeah, look, it's one that has been rumbling on for a while. It was one of the ones that Spurs seem to be prioritising late on in the summer transfer window, and it's a complicated deal if anything is to happen with the FFP playing a part in Chelsea's side, but also Pochettino giving him the captain's armband in the absence of Reece James and seemingly loving what he's doing in the middle of that park. But it's a position that Tottenham, are, like we mentioned earlier, Lyall, are looking to strengthen, and Gallagher top of that list. Do you think Chelsea would allow Gallagher to move to such a rival like Tottenham, one that they don't often do business with, if the right fee came in?
I don't think they'd like doing it if they did. Gallagher's situation at Chelsea is really interesting, and it's really interesting on a number of fronts because, I mean, obviously the first point is that he's happy and enjoying his football there because he's playing and he's been the captain, and Pochettino likes him and has been using him. So the playing element is not an issue. His performances are not an issue. It's the contract situation, I think, that's the issue, is that he's got 18 months left on his deal at Chelsea. Chelsea give long contracts now. They give 7-8-year contracts to people. So I think if they're looking at, Chelsea staff, sporting directors, Todd Bowley, Egbali, the board, they've got to be thinking, okay, we've got to give him a 6-7 year deal. We've got to build the team around him really in midfield if we're going to do that, and pay him accordingly. And Chelsea have also been trying to bring in quite a responsible and stringent, probably not quite the word, but responsible is probably the right word, wage structure there, because it wasn't like that before. One based more on incentives and keeping the players closer together so you don't have that disparity between players, because it can cause disruption. So that's one of the issues that the new guys, the sporting directors, have had to address when they've come in. So that's forming part of it as well. So for as long as he's not signing a new contract and got 18 months left, Chelsea are in a predicament really, because I think they had also made a bit of a unwritten rule that once players get to that stage at Chelsea, that they would look to move them on and sell them and get some money for them. You're right. We're calling it PSR now, profit and sustainability rules, rather than FFP. I'm trying to keep that in my mind as well, because I keep saying FFP as well, which stuck, didn't it? And then they changed it to PSR. So PSR, that Chelsea are there as well, and they have to be very, very conscious of that at the same time. So if they need to move players out, even though Pochettino has said that they don't have to do that to bring players in, but if it's in their thinking, then they also need to look at the players that they do have interest in from other clubs that they can sell. And obviously we know Spurs are interested in Gallagher. So yeah, listen, I will caveat all that by saying I haven't heard anything new about Gallagher, and certainly about Gallagher and Spurs, in the last week, 10 days, maybe a little bit more. So that's gone a little bit quiet now. So let's see if it resurfaces at all before the end of the window. As I said, there's lots of conditions that need to be met as well if Spurs are going to have a look at doing a central midfielder at the end of the window as well. So, yeah, interesting one.
I think, just on that player and the respective clubs, I mean, I don't need to say this, you know this anyway, that Spurs and Chelsea, they haven't done business, I believe, until you go all the way back to, I want to say, Gus Poyet in 2001. If I'm going back that far, it might be further back than that. I know there's been Neil Sullivan. I mean, Carlo Codicini came on a free, so I'm discounting that. Do you feel now that the relationship between those two clubs will trade in the future? Because obviously the way in what it was between Abramovich and Levy, that never really happened. I mean, obviously that was subsequently to the time where, again, you'll know this, where Arneson, of course, left Tottenham and went to Chelsea, which caused a lot of bad blood. And obviously since then we haven't seen any business between the two clubs. I mean, do you feel that's now changed? Can you see both clubs open for trading with each other?
Yes, more so now than for a long time. Yeah, because I mean they wouldn't do business together for a very long time, and now obviously there's completely different personnel at Chelsea, so that's opened the door slightly. But there's still the rivalry there.
Yep.
Between the two clubs generally, you know, it's obviously not as formidable as the one with Arsenal, which you can always pretty much guarantee that there will never be any deals done between Arsenal and Tottenham. And I don't think there's been any deals done between Arsenal and Tottenham. I think Campbell was a free, and I think Gallas was a free as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, from Chelsea.
He contract run out. So players have moved, but between the clubs, but not for any money. So but with Chelsea, it's obviously more likely. But you know, there are people that can get deals done. You know, that's the thing these days about doing deals.
I just got to say, Lyall, I've just picked up what Matt has just put out in the messages here. Matt was 8 months old when Gus Poyet joined Spurs, and I feel about 150 now. Even though I've aged having 2 kids, but this is now made me feel even more over the edge.
That's what I'm here for, Ricky.
Oh wow! Yeah.
God, I tell you what.
Want to hear that.
I didn't want to hear that either. I tell you what, Matt's really brought down the mood now. Ageism on last one of Spurs. Can you believe this? Okay, listen. So Gallagher, do you think?
Well, also, actually, while we're talking about the comments, I noticed somebody asked, "Is that a napalm death flag in the background?" Yes, it is. By the way, yes, it is.
Oh man, rocking it, Lyall. Absolutely rocking it. Your feeling, Lyall, Gallagher. Could you see a way in which that does become a saga in relation to the last week of the window, or do you just think that will more happen towards the summer? Have you got a gut on where that is at the moment? Do you have a feeling at all?
No.
Okay. End of question. Over to you, Matty. I'll let Matt take over.
We go down to centre, the other midfield options that we're at.
Absolutely. Oh, do you know what? I feel bad now.
I get the question with all the names. Yeah, has Ricky's name beside it on the script? You know, Lyall, I swear I'm a good person.
I think I already mentioned it. I think I already said Edison and.
It's number 20 names, Lyall. Come on.
There's a few youngsters who are attracting attention on the continent that I think a lot of Spurs fans are interested. There's Arthur Vermeeren and Rooney Bargy, who of course scored against United in the Champions League. Adam Morton,
a winger, isn't he? Bargy a winger? I think he is.
Yeah, attacking midfielder winger. I think I won't claim to be an expert. I do have a Copenhagen jersey behind me, but
we've thrown them all in. Listen, we've thrown them all in.
I think he's like forward, isn't he, Bargy? I think that's the way I understand him.
Tell me.
Is there anything to Arthur Vermeeren or Calvin Phillips? I think an interesting one with a potential short-term loan move there.
On £7 million a year, £7 million a year. No.
Okay.
Not in this window. No. What was I going to say? Who are the other people that you mentioned? Vermeeren. Yeah, Vermeeren's an interesting one. Yeah. Well, listen. You know, we were talking about Spurs. You know, the project being young talent. I mean, he would fit into that category, sure, of players that they would consider because of his profile, you know, because he's young, really talented, central midfield player, quite dynamic. I think I mentioned Hayden Hackney before. I would probably say the two players are quite similar. So yeah, listen, yeah, I mean, he'll be one that Spurs are scouted, but I've not heard, you know, anything on him. No one's come to me and said, or in my conversations, no one said to me, oh yeah, Arthur Vermeeren. No, I've not heard that name directly with Spurs. Certainly not this month. But a good player, or could be a good player, good potential.
Yeah.
Just one more to throw at you. Ko Itakura. That's a name that a few Spurs fans have been thrown around.
I think that's come through tonight as a defender, Borussia Mönchengladbach.
Yeah, he's centre half, isn't he?
I think Ange has worked with him previously. I think that name's just come in the last couple of hours or so. I think being reported out in Sky Sports, I believe Germany, if in case I'm wrong, but they're saying that apparently there's a player there that Spurs may have a possible interest in the summer. And worked with him before at Celtic. I think that's one you
Yeah,
come
he
across
did.
well.
That's right.
Yeah.
He did. So
Yeah.
yeah, logical that he'd be linked with Ange then.
Good player. Know much
It's a
about
scorer.
him?
Comes up high on the stats. Yeah, it comes up high on the stats. I noticed his name. Yeah, I mean, before the window starts, I do a lot of work on statistical stuff.
Yep.
Just to build basically building lists of players who are performing highly statistically in their positions in well, across the world, but mostly in Europe. A little bit of a journalistic kind of secret I'm letting you in on here that I developed, which is by building these lists, obviously that gives me a good idea of which players that clubs are going to go for, right?
Yep.
That's the benefit of having raw data on players, and Itakura comes out high in the Bundesliga this season, but less so in the last calendar year.
Interesting. One thing that has come up only because of the new formed relationship Spurs seem to be having with Plymouth Argyle following the.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? There are two players who got to Plymouth. I've noticed that.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've got a very talented player there, attacking midfielder, and can play right wing. Morgan Whittaker. I think people are putting 2 and 2 together, hoping it comes up with 4. Do you know anything about any?
Not necessarily, no, because I mean, as I said, top young talent is what Spurs are looking at. I mean, if you're looking at Jonathan Rowe, then you're also looking at players like Morgan Whittaker because they're doing really well and they're young talents up and coming in the Championship. So yeah, listen again, it's not a name that someone has said to me this month, especially, but good player.
Okay.
On those young Championship players, Lyall, it's been a way that Tottenham have done a few deals in the last couple of years. Destiny Udogie and Paps are the ones that stand out where we've brought these players in and loaned them back to their parent club for a season. Is that something you think that the Postecoglou would be for or against? Like, could there be a change in system there? Because like Morgan Whittaker as an example, Plymouth just lost Finn Azaz. They need goals in that team. You think they'd be unlikely to lose him in January if Tottenham did go there? Do you think Postecoglou would be happy to loan them back, or would he prefer to have them on the training ground with him?
That's a good question. I don't know what he would think personally about that. I mean, knowing Ange or assessing Ange, you'd think he'd be pragmatic enough to think that if he was a player that he wanted as part of his long-term sort of vision and project, but signing him now, he wouldn't play very much at Spurs in the beginning, and needs to continue playing wherever he is. I mean, you look at Jonathan Rowe, for example. So, like Jonathan Rowe, if there's a situation that we get to in this window with Jonathan Rowe where Premier League clubs start coming in and making offers for him, and it's looking increasingly likely that he might go somewhere or to a certain destination. I mean, I've already mentioned that Brentford are also interested in him. It's a possibility for them before the end of the window. If Spurs look at that and go, okay, do we really want Jonathan Rowe? If we do, then do we need to do him now and keep him where he is to get the player that we want long term? I mean, that will be a huge part of how they think about these players. But I don't know that at this stage that they're that strongly interested in Jonathan Rowe that they would do that. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. I don't know.
Moving on to a deal that was completed today, and you mentioned Brentford, their team interested in Jonathan Rowe. They were certainly interested in Sergio Reguilon, and they've got that deal over the line today. A 6-month loan deal for the left back who had his loan at Manchester United cut short, but is out for more game time in the Premier League. And with Brentford missing Rico Henry, you'd assume he'd get a lot of game time there. What have you made of this move, Lyall? And is there anything we can expect over the next 6 months with Sergio?
I think, good move for Sergio. I mean, obviously, I don't think he's got really a future at Tottenham anymore, but he's needed to go somewhere, obviously, where he's going to play regularly to just get himself back to the level that he was before. Brentford's a great club for him, I think. I think it's a really good match at this point. He'll enjoy it there. It's a great environment there. Thomas Frank's a great manager to work for as well. So, it's great for Brentford. Brentford have needed a player in that position because Rico Henry's out for the rest of probably for the rest of the season. And I know they wanted to bring in a young player themselves, ideally, but the options are just not there on the market for them. So it's good for them that Reguilon's not been needed at Manchester United and has come across their radar, and they've done well to get him because I think he's a a good caliber of player for Brentford to bring in and give them a boost and give them a lift. At the same time as Ivan Toney coming back. So I guess it just suits everybody, really, doesn't it? At this point, I like Sergio Reguilon. I think he's a good player.
You surprised, Lyall, very quickly before Matt jumps back in there. You surprised that there's no option to buy, given the fact, I mean, you've said it there, it doesn't look to have much of a future at Spurs. Is it just a case one that...
No, I think it's just more of sort of a marriage of convenience at this point, because, like I said, I think Brentford would prefer to do a younger player more for the long term, but the options aren't there. And I think Sergio Reguilon has probably got long term ambitions to be playing back in a team that might be in the Champions League, for example, or playing in Europe anyway, long term as well. So I think it just suits everybody at this point in a market that's not very strong at the moment, is it really, in terms of options for players and players for clubs.
That's what I was going to ask, Ricky. The telepathic connection is there.
It happens. I mean, look, in terms of other outgoings or potential outgoings, we have seen Alfie Devine also leave the club. He has gone on loan to Plymouth, of course. Now, interesting, because I think there's a real high ceiling with Alfie Devine, one that I know many Spurs fans are getting excited about. And the fact that obviously he's gone on loan with Ashley Phillips seems to indicate their potential relationship that I touched upon a few moments ago. How important is it that those guys are playing regular first team football? Because it feels with Alfie that even when we saw him a couple of times actually playing the first team, that there's a real good player there. And you just feel that the now acceleration of having regular first team football at an even higher level, do you think he's one that could come back in pre-season and maybe surprise a few?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he's quite highly rated at Spurs, Alfie Devine, as one of that batch of youngsters that are sort of in and around it, aren't they? And Spurs are hoping that they can, kick on a couple of levels and start to push for a place. But when the opportunity comes for your youth player to play at a higher level, you have to take it, because they've got to be tested at that level, haven't they? I mean, he's got a bit of an opportunity there. You mentioned Finn Azaz having gone to Borough. There's a spot that's opened up there, so Alfie's got an opportunity to make that his the rest of the season at Plymouth. Help keep them in the league, keep them in the Championship if they can, and same for Ashley Phillips in defence. So yeah, it suits them. I like Dane Scarlett quite a lot as a player. I think he's one that Spurs fans should be really looking at as one that will push. I mean, I'm not sure if he's got an injury at the moment or not, or what.
Yes,
the situation
he was carrying an injury at the time. Yep.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
But again, I think he's one to watch as well. I'm sure plenty of Spurs fans are aware of him already.
And Jed Spence, very quickly on it, Lyall. I mean, I think many were maybe a bit surprised by the fact that Leeds decided to terminate that loan. Where are we with Jed Spence? Obviously, gone out on loan to Genoa. Do you just feel it's just a case now of him trying to...
I don't think he has a future at Spurs anymore. No, I think Jed needs to settle down, play, get himself in Genoa's team and play as much as he possibly can and get himself back to the kind of level that he was showing when he was at Middlesbrough.
Real shame, because I remember when you came on here, Lyall, the first time you came on here, you used to rave about the talent of the guy. And I think not that we would ever question a player's attitude. Well, not that we would ever question a player's professional attitude. I think we all said that as long as he's in the right headspace, what a player he could potentially be, right?
Yeah. Yeah, potential, ability, all there in abundance. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. He's just got to do it now. He's just got to get his head down and show it and do it and concentrate on his football, and let's see if he can do that in Genoa. But in terms of his Spurs career, I don't think he's got a long-term future at Spurs. Okay. I think they would have sold him if they could at this point. So yeah, I expect that to be the case in the summer.
It tells you a lot, before Matt just jumps back in there, it just tells you a lot about the fact that there hadn't been many takers, isn't it? That's also another key indicator that obviously came back, not much out there in terms of clubs to go to, and therefore Spurs getting that deal with Genoa. Like you say there, look, we fingers crossed hope the player can get to play football. I mean, that's the most important thing, get himself back on the pitch and see where that takes him, and I'll hand back over to Matt.
Yeah, it's another couple of players that are potentially on the way out of Spurs. Ryan Sessegnon struggling for game time. Look, injuries are, of course, his issue. Back after 11 months, plays 10 minutes against Burnley, and he's picked up another knock. I think I just want to mention, I think a few fans have been a little bit harsh on him. It's not his fault, and I think no one will be more frustrated and upset about the injuries than he will. And Oliver Skip as well. Some maybe think he's not exactly suited to the system that we have at Spurs now. Do you think either of those players hold a long-term future at Spurs?
Yeah, I think it's more the jury out. I think is still out on those two. Ryan, like you said, injuries has just been the problem for him, and I do feel sorry for him, for Ryan, because again, another player who's got loads of talent or loads of potential and has just been hampered by injuries the whole time he's been in there. So, really unfortunate for him. And look, Spurs need players that are going to be fit and available to play all the time, right? So, when a player's injured that much, it makes things difficult. I think if he gets himself fit before the end of the window, there's a chance he could go on loan somewhere, which would be good for him if he can stay fit. I think that's what he needs. Oliver Skip is an interesting one. I mean, listen, he's obviously an academy graduate and homegrown, so that's quite fundamental for Spurs and for any team. Obviously, it's quite important, and so that puts him in a strong position. I think, again, he's not played that much, but he has been used fairly regularly, certainly from the bench. And I think he did well at United, actually. Didn't necessarily stand out as doing it.
He did play well.
Yeah,
he
had a good game.
Yep.
And I'm sure if you looked at the stats as well, I'm sure he would have come out strongly, because what he does is the simple things really well.
Yep.
You need a player like that. You do. But, I think it will be something that everybody will have to look at maybe in the summer if he doesn't play that regularly, because I can imagine from his point of view, if he gets to the summer and he's not in the team regularly, he will be probably thinking, I want to be somewhere where I'm the guy. So he's probably at that stage of his career, probably. But yeah, I think so. There's a lot to see what happens with him. I think as well, I think I've touched on it before. Is he better as a 6? Is he better in the 8? Who knows?
That is a big problem, isn't it? I don't think we actually know that yet. I'm
not
sure
Ange fancies him in the 8. He seems to play him a little bit more often advanced, if I've got that right.
You are right. Yeah, you are. I think that has been the problem as well, Lyall, to pick up on the fact. And, I'd love to have more time. Again, it's one of those things where, how long can we... There's so much we could talk about, but I'm conscious of very much time that, someone like Eric Dyer, that was also the biggest problem. Eric fancies himself as a central defender. Our argument says his best years at Spurs were playing as a central defensive midfielder. And, I worry for Skip that he's yet to identify what is his best position. And I also have a fear for him that I know he's a Spurs boy. I know he wants to play for the club. That he might be happy to play 20 games a season and be rotational and not play every minute because he's playing for his boyhood club. I don't know what's in the player's mind. But the problem is I look at the way Spurs play under Ange, and at times, not all the time, I just feel he looks uncomfortable in the system. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm not saying that he's not good enough. I just feel he looks uncomfortable in the system when you look at when Spurs have got players fit, the likes of Sarr, the likes of Basuma when he's at the top of his game, Maddison, suddenly he starts falling down that pecking order, and it's very hard to see a lot of game time for him. One player I do want to quickly mention before we come on to the final couple, Brennan Johnson. Now, Brennan Johnson came in for a huge fee, of course, in the summer, and I think there's that feeling amongst fans that, and I don't want to speak for all fans, that would be wrong of me to say that when you're paying 50 million, you would like to see more of an end product. And there's no doubt about it. I know 50 million these days does buy you a lot on that word potential. And look, potentially looks like a really good player, got absolutely frightening pace, which I'm sure Ange absolutely loves. I think this is maybe your opportunity, Lyall, to tell us if you do feel he's going to be a very good player for Spurs. It's going to take a bit of time of adaptation because he's not had a pre-season at Spurs. He came in, of course, at the end of the window. Your feelings on the fact that Brennan is yet to really hit the ground running in a Spurs shirt?
He joined a much bigger club than he's used to. New environment, moved south, still young. I think he's top. I think he will be top. So I think Spurs have made the right decision. I'm just going to stick my neck out at this point and say that I think that money will come good. I would caveat that by making the point that he's probably another player whose best position is yet to be established. Is he better as a right winger? Is he better as a left winger? Is he better ultimately maybe as a number 9? Who knows? I know there are people out there who have seen him as potentially becoming a number 9. So, yeah, I think that part of it needs to be established. But, potential to be a top player, I think.
Thank you.
I think with Brennan Johnson, once the confidence comes in there, he's going to be a completely different player. A lot of people are frustrated that his end ball isn't there. Sometimes when he should shoot, he takes the pass and vice versa. But at 22 years of age, like you said, Lyall going into a much bigger club than he's used to and playing a very different style to what he's used to. The fact that he's getting into those positions, I think, is half the battle. And once he has that confidence to put his foot through the ball when he's in the 18-yard box, I think the numbers will start tumbling. And I'm the same as you. I'm optimistic for what he can offer. On the other side of that front three, Bryan Hill is a player already had a couple of loans, and Fiorentina and Feyenoord rumored to be interested in taking his services this January. Just 2.5 years left in his contract after what was a very high-profile move a couple of years ago. Do you think Hill is a player that Ange would let leave this January or in the summer?
I don't know about the summer. January, I don't think so. I mean, what I know is that Bryan Hill's not in any rush to go anywhere. I think I know when I hear he is enjoying things under Ange. Again, he's somebody that's been used off the bench. He's made enough appearances off the bench, and again, is useful. I think again needs to be more effective in the final third. What Spurs fans are really wanting to see from him is get the ball and put it in the net really a bit more often for an attacking player, for someone who's playing off either side. I think that's what they want to see from him. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with him the last week or so of the window. I think if he was really desperate to go somewhere on loan, then they would probably let him. But from what I'm hearing, he's not beating down the door to do that at this stage. So yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Just before we look to close it on last two favourite questions on Last Word on Spurs, he absolutely adores these.
How many players are going to sign? Probably something like that. And it will be what will the other one be? I'm not sure.
He got 1 out of 1 there, though.
Where will Spurs finish in the league or something like that? Probably.
Oh, look at that! He's got the right to, and he's also studied for it. So make sure, Lyall, you say the right answers because people love you on here. So you've got to get the last two right. Japhet Tanganga looks like he's closing in on a loan to Millwall. God, Andrew's not wasting any time, though, is he? He really is. No disrespect to him, moving on those players that, quite frankly, haven't had adequate game time. Is it quite refreshing to see the fact Spurs are going to have quite, I would say, a hungry, competitive second half of the season squad that all of them really, you feel, probably will get game time potentially, Lyall, given these outgoings?
Yeah. Yes is the short answer, yeah.
Yeah, like I say, want to keep an eye on that. Is closing in. Right. I will start off on these final two questions. Lyall, thank you so much, mate. We've taken you way over time, like usual. Blame me. Absolutely blame me. Don't blame Matty.
Oh, it's transfer in there, mate. It's going off all the time. All the time. Right. First one is, what do you personally feel constitutes success for Ange Postecoglou in his first season in charge at Spurs? And to add to that part, where do you think the club are going to finish in the Premier League? I think if Tottenham finish in the Champions League spaces, you have to say that that's a successful season for Ange in his first year, no doubt. I mean, if they could add the FA Cup to that, again, Spurs fans can have this debate all day. Would you take 5th in the FA Cup or not? Or would you take 4th in the FA Cup final and FA Cup semi-final? Okay, you can have that debate all day long. But, obviously silverware is the elusive holy grail for Tottenham fans over a long time and the club. So I think Champions League football is really important, though. I just do. I think just for the project, for getting to the next stage where they can put more of an established squad together to fight on multiple. I think they need to do that. I think if another season goes by where they're not doing that, because that's going to be a real test of Spurs. Again, it's going to be a test of the recruitment staff. It's going to be a test of Ange. It's going to be a test of the club generally. Once they get back to that stage, can they put a squad together that can compete on all those fronts at the same time? Up there in the way that City do and Liverpool do and Arsenal are doing and other clubs have done in the past. That's the real test, I think, for Spurs and Ange. So I'd like to see that happen sooner rather than later, just to see how that that transpires. But yeah, I mean, I think Spurs will finish in the top 4. I think so.
Wow.
I mean, I know they're waiting for people seem to be waiting for clubs like Villa to sort of drop off a little bit.
Yep.
So let's see if they do. I think it's interesting that Villa haven't done anything in the market at this point, because I was told from multiple sources that Villa would look to have a go in the market properly, bring some players in, improve on what they had to cement their place where they are, and haven't done that. And I've also heard in the last couple of days that they've actually reassessed, what they're capable of doing in the market, and actually have decided that they're not going to go. They were going to try and sign a winger, for example. It's now looking unlikely that they'll add a winger. I think they were willing to commit some money to a right back, and they've gone and spent just around sort of 9-10 million euros on a young right back from Red Star Belgrade. So I think that's interesting that Villa have not acted and not brought in some players already. Whether they will or not before the end of the window, let's see. But if they get to the end of the window and they haven't, I think that'll be in Spurs' favour. Who else do Spurs need to beat to those positions? Well, I mean, if Villa drop out, then they don't need to do that. If you have a top 4 of City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Tottenham,
are we looking at Arsenal saying? I mean, we're level points with them at the moment. I mean, I know we've played a game more. Do you mean where we where we are on that table at the moment? Where do you feel it's going to finish, Lyall, that table? Do you have a 1 second? Do you have a third?
I mean, you're asking me if Spurs going to finish above Arsenal or not? Is that what you're asking me? God, you really want to get me killed by everybody, don't you?
You did that. I didn't ask you that.
That.
But do you feel okay? So
I know better.
You feel Spurs? Or do you think Spurs can, and you feel they could finish in the top 4? That's the key here. They can finish in the top 4.
Yeah.
Okay. And it would be wrong of me, Lyall, not to ask you this, because you know how much I love my cups, and you know how much I value the FA Cup. Spurs, of course, have City, the holders. There's his cup. There's the man's cup. Can Tottenham beat Man City and advance in the FA Cup, given the fact City have yet to score a goal at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? What do you think?
Because I mean, the Tottenham playing against Tottenham are a bogey team, for if I can use that. It's a bit of a draconian way of talking, isn't it, about football? But we used to talk about that when I played football as a kid, who were a bogey team. Tottenham are a bogey team for Man City, especially at Tottenham. So yeah, of course they can beat City.
Will they beat City?
Will they beat City? I'm not clairvoyant, Ricky. I can't predict the future.
That means no.
I love this guy. Can I just say, you see why this guy works for Sky Sports, right? Can't get out of him. He's brilliant. I will hand over to Matt to close off the interrogation. These are meant to be the easier questions, Lyall. Over to you, Matty.
Yeah, look, you spoil a surprise, Lyall. I think that just shows how often you put yourself through an hour and a half with myself and Ricky. But how many players do you think Tottenham will get over the line between now and the deadline, if any?
That's a that. 1. Can I just say for our listeners on audio, because
If any, but I wouldn't be surprised if we get to the window and that's them done. And Spurs fans shouldn't be disappointed if that's the case, because I think that they've had a good window, even if they stick what they've done.
Well, I think you must learn it, Lyall, as well. You know, from when you put out your stuff on, obviously, X and the different places. I mean, has it been unusual, the fact that you've not probably had a lot of people come back in your replies and saying, they've got to do more, they should be doing more? I feel at the moment we're in a relatively good space.
I'm used to that though, and I don't know whether a lot of supporters know this, but if they took the time, and they don't, and why should they? But if they took the time to actually look at the replies on other journalists' stuff about other clubs,
right?
Their fans are saying the same thing anyway. So it's, do you know what I mean? And I don't think anybody's always going to be satisfied, and people, they want their clubs to sign new players because it's exciting and. And that's part of the joy of football, right? And that's part of the joy of football club supporting is being excited about what players you might get. So I'm not going to turn around and tell them they shouldn't get excited about signing another one, or they shouldn't demand another player. It's absolutely well within their rights to do that. But I'll say is whether I think it's going to happen or not.
I will say,
if I say it's not going to happen, please don't shoot the messenger. Yeah.
You do know this is me and Matt's favourite time of the year, twice a year when the window comes open, because it does. I've got to say also, with the window being open, it does send you quite nutty and insane, because it dictates a lot of your opinions, and not forcefully, but on games, your opinion gets clouded because the window's open, and that means you could buy everyone, you could sell everyone, you could loan everyone, and that also I think does affect the mood. I know many, like, you know, Jason, bless him. Jason, can I just tell you, Lyall, he still hates the transfer window. Still can't wait for it to shut. Jason McGovern, he has not changed at all.
Bless him.
Bless his heart. So, yeah, like I say, it's an interesting place. We always value Matt having you on. Thank you so much. Listen, we've been at 1,000 plus of you watching us live tonight. Again, thank you so much for all your incredible support for the show. Lyall, thank you as always for coming on, giving us your opinions on all things Spurs. For those that don't know where to find you, I don't believe they can't and know where not to find you, but how can they find you, Lyall, for those that want to get more on Spurs and in general more on football, because it's not just Tottenham you cover, it's a lot of football in there. So thank you so much, and where can people find you, Lyall?
Well, Sky Sports News, Channel 409 on Sky, skysports.com. I mean, I don't know if, I'm sure probably a lot of people do use it, but the Transfer Centre live blog that we have running on skysports.com and on the apps and everything, that's really the place where everything goes in, and there's lots of, you know, little exclusive bits, little videos and stuff that go in and supplement the coverage. So, you know, that is a real place to go. Like, get yourself on that blog, you know, at least a few times a day, because there's lots of interesting stuff to read, lots of interesting videos to watch as well. You might sometimes see me on a video or two on there as well, if you're lucky. So yeah, that's the place to be. And obviously on my Twitter feed as well, Sky Sports as well, you know, you can follow me there, and that's why I put all my news, and obviously also, you know, promote the news that the other guys do, and Sky Sports News does as a whole.
Lyall, a minute, mate. Thank you so much. We're 8 years down the line of this beautiful marriage, and it just flourishes and continues, mate. So thank you so much. Always a pleasure. And the hair gets better every time, I must say. Look at Lyall. Isn't that unbelievable? That hair on point. Absolutely superb. Matt,
I've actually grown a little bit of a beard as a joke. I thought you were going to actually make a comment on the beard about the moustache, but no one mentioned it, which is good.
I wasn't brave enough, Lyall. I wasn't brave enough. I should have been brave enough, really. On the back of seeing that flag in the background, I should have been brave enough.
What's that bloody tash you got on you?
Oh, my God. Listen, I'm a Spurs fan, Lyall. I'm used to bottling big questions, right, and big moments. You can't blame me. Matty, thank you so much. A pleasure as always, Matt. Right, always great to get this man on.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like I learn more on an hour and a half with Lyall than I do in the other 364 days of the year. So really appreciate your time, Lyall. And I felt I might have been third wheeling a little bit tonight, but it's been a pleasure.
Sorry, mate.
Don't take it what I've got to say though is, on the back of what Lyall said, the fact that, you know, he gets all, now it's made me think he's got all those other like 92 clubs in the league now saying in his mentions, why aren't we signing everyone? No, I do feel really sorry for him when the window's open. Listen, guys, thank you so much for your incredible support. Thank you, like I say, over 1,000 plus of you watching this live. Listen, we've been joined by the wonderful, obviously called Sky Sports News editor, journalist, the wonderful Lyall Thomas. From myself, from Lyall, from the wonderful Matty Hayes. We've been the last one on Spurs. Please keep safe, keep well. We're still in for business, and as always,